much of our system has the, you know, an area goes out? How much of our, and you can see it on your computer, how much of our system is covered by that? Could you go back one slide,
Sure.
please? Okay, the faulted circuit indicators. Okay, is that throughout our system, or is that only in certain areas? I mean, how much of our system has these things that you talk about?
Okay. My next slide that I'll show will show the extent of where we've installed that thus far.
Okay, okay.
But your question about how many places do we know when the power goes out versus do we depend on customers calling in?
Right,
I
correct.
think you maybe asked about the customer meeting that
Yes.
you guys together. The difference there is if it's a breaker that goes out in the substation through the SCADA, we do know about that.
Right.
But as those lines go out and serve our customers, we have sections that line may peel off and serve this neighborhood or this little commercial part. And we protect our equipment with fuses or reclosers at each of those taps. So if something happens that doesn't affect the breaker, then we may not have visibility of that.
Okay.
And we do need our customers to call in and start reporting that we have outages.
Yeah, okay. Just curious, has anyone called in from my neighborhood since our meeting?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
That's good.
Have you had outages that you know of?
Not that I know of,
Okay.
but that doesn't.
Yeah.
This is a map of the KUB electric service territory. Goes all the way down to the bottom, down to Seymour to the south, and up to the north, all the way to Norris Lake. And these colors that you see are the areas where we have put some of our distributed automation devices, mostly the faulted circuit indicators and some of these self-healing switches. You can see by this graph, and they're arranged by colors, which you can see on the legend to the right. But we have been putting these throughout our territory. And you may wonder, how do you decide where to put these things? We look at a couple of factors. One is certainly the customer minutes of interruption. We track that metric by each circuit, so we know where our worst performing circuits are. And so we will go and put some of this equipment out there to help us reduce that response time. This may also be due by the length of the circuits. You can see here the purple area up toward Granger County. That is our Luttrell substation that reaches all the way up to the Washburn area. So many miles, I think some of those circuits approach 40 miles in length, so a lot of area to patrol if you have to get up there and just start driving it. The whole time we're patrolling, the customers, they're getting frustrated because their power is off. So these devices we put in these areas to help us reduce that response time. So that's kind of a quick background of some of the technologies that we've used today, but where are we going to go in the future? One of the things that we recognize at KUB with our underground distribution system that we have, for example, in the downtown Knoxville area, and a lot of our newer subdivisions that have been built in the past 5 to 10 years or so, we have a lot of underground cable on our system. And while that cable is reliable, when you do have a problem on it, it's very difficult to find. When the wires are overhead and you've got a problem, a broken conductor, let's say, or a tree that's fallen into the lines, you can see that fairly quickly and make the repair. On the underground system, it takes much, much longer to isolate where your problem is. Now, the good news is, in most of our areas, we have a loop system, so we can find that, once we find that damaged area, we can do some backfeeding to restore power as quickly as possible to those customers. But there are some new devices available, faulted circuit indicators for underground systems. So what we now have up on the overhead system, we can have on the underground system at manholes or switchgear to help us quickly identify that bad cable section. Another effort that we have underway, working with our security team, is putting some cameras in some of our in-feed substations where we receive power from TVA. The cameras that we've chosen to use there not only have that security aspect, they also have the ability with their thermal imaging capabilities. We can scan our equipment and look for hot spots on our equipment, which is, in the electric industry, that's a signal that you've got something going on you need to address. So when these cameras are up and running, we will have that forewarning before we have any equipment failure. I mentioned about the FCIs on the underground cable. We are looking forward to installing those on the downtown network area, and also about putting some additional SCADA equipment in the downtown area, typically because everything is underground and concrete vaults. We've always had issues of being able to communicate with anything that's below ground. But there's some new technologies for our electrical equipment that will communicate to us and let us know if a particular protected device is operated. And we have changed our specifications with our engineering group, and we're now ordering that communications piece to be provided with our downtown equipment. We don't necessarily have the infrastructure up yet to receive the signal from it, but when we get that built, that part of the equipment will already be there so we can get that information. And of course, you're aware of our smart grid project in the Fort Sanders area where we're testing out our advanced meter infrastructure. That is also going to be a tremendous help to us in responding to system emergencies. The smart grid, as we call it, with these new meters, your first thought may be that that's just going to help with getting the meter readings back into KUB. And that's absolutely true. That'll save us a lot of expense and effort. But these meters are also going to be very useful to me in the operations center to help us know where these outages occur. As Commissioner Simmons and I were speaking about, right now we depend on customers oftentimes calling in and telling us that their power is out. If they don't call for a few hours, we may not know for a few hours. With these meters, they're going in place. Each one will be a miniature power recording meter. So when that power goes out, it's going to wait a few minutes just to make sure that the power is restored. If it's not, then it's going to communicate back to us and let us know that we've lost power to a customer or a section or a community. And so we'll quickly know that we've had that outage and we'll be responding. What's going to make that system very advantageous for us is the communication system that we'll be putting up as part of that. The Census Company is the contractor that KUB chose for our pilot area in the Fort Sanders community. And as part of that, when they put these towers up, they'll give us the ability to communicate with all types of devices out in the field. The faulted circuit indicators that are on the wires now, they aid the troubled once he arrives on scene and starts patrolling the circuit. But once we get a radio system up and we get that data back to the operations center, we will know immediately where that trouble is. So we can say, when you get to this area, start patrolling at this road and start looking for the issue. So you can save us even more time. And of course, one of the big components of that is our fiber optic loop that we're installing in the smart grid area. By having that fiber optic loop, it will give us the ability to carry many more pieces of information from the field back to the operations center, where our computer systems can use that then to help us further diagnose problems and respond. So what does all that mean? Where have we come since 2006 when the board established this goal for us? This graph shows where we were back in 2005. And in 2006 was the first year that the Board Audit Committee gave us a goal. The red line represents our target. A couple of things I want to point out. The dark blue at the bottom is what we call a blue sky day. A day like this when cars hit poles or something happens that causes an outage. The light blue then would be what we call an IEEE event or a major storm event. And so you can see we performed very well over the past few years. Back in 2009, we had quite a few storms, and our total customer hours, I've shifted to hours now, but it was 6 hours, almost 6.5 hours of interruption per customer attributed to storms and normal blue sky event. 2011 was not a good year for KUB for our customers. With the two major storms that we had in April and June, you can see that we had a lot of customers without power. In matter of fact, if you were to take this graph up, it'd be over 20 hours for the average customer. So year to date and for fiscal year 12, right now we are a little above our target at current rate, but we are confident that we will be able to meet that target for this year. But this gives you a sense of our history of what we've been able to achieve over the past 5 years. And of course, through our Century 2 program that y'all are aware of, the additional funding, we are taking a lot of those dollars on the electric system to make sure that we're making appropriate improvements. We've done a lot of work inspecting our system to know the condition of our poles, our wires, our equipment. And the Century 2 teams throughout KUB are working cooperatively to make sure that we do get this equipment placed toward the end of its useful life. Our goal is to predict when it's going to fail and replace it before that happens. We're also doing a lot of work on engineering. We talked about some of these new technologies that are available. We have changed our specifications and tools and equipment that we buy to make sure that we are getting equipment and materials that will serve our customers well, and again, just harden our system to reduce those customer minutes of interruption. And of course, one of the things that we do is our predictive maintenance of critical infrastructure. The KUB system is very complex, and we spend a lot of time just testing and maintaining that system. We want to ensure our customers that they know that we're continually making improvements in our capital and upgrading all of our systems. And of course, through all of this analysis and work, as we see an area that needs addressing, we will go ahead and target those areas that we need to address. This is a drawing I wanted to show you about an area that because of our work and because of some equipment failure, we had to move up in our replacement schedule. This may be a little hard to see, but this area is the Townview Terrace area, just east of James White Parkway. This is the Marriott Hotel to the bottom. The large white item is the Civic Auditorium and Coliseum. The safety building is here at the top of the drawing. Back this spring, we had a series of breaker operations in the substation that serves this area. Once we got out and started patrolling the area, we discovered that the problem was within some of our underground cable. And again, because that's underground, it can sometimes take a long time to find that problem. We were able to isolate this section from our overhead customers and get power restored to them fairly quickly. But for these customers, they were out for many hours while we looked at that problem and made some system changes. Once we made those changes, we went along for about 2 months and then had another cable failure, which is not uncommon on the underground system with the fault currents damaging the cable. But because we knew that we had had a couple of cable failures, we had a lot of cable of the same vintage in that area, we made the decision to go ahead and to move this project up on our cable replacement project. And we replaced most of this cable that you see from the bottom up around the Civic Auditorium and on up to the Townview Terrace. We had some pretty unhappy customers when that power was out. I mentioned the auditorium, Coliseum, the safety building where Knoxville Police Department is headquartered, the Knoxville Transit Facility. So we were able to go ahead and replace that cable and make those improvements and get that cable that had served us well for those years out of the system and get some new cable in. So that's my presentation on power reliability and what we've been able to achieve. Are there any questions I can answer?
I'll answer this question this month rather than next month at the vegetation presentation. But in regard to the data collected on vegetation management caused outages, I think one of our tree panel members was kind of hung up on this. How has that changed? When did it change? And how specific are we with what we collected info?
Okay.
That's too much to answer. I'll wait till next month.
No, I'll give you the answer, and I'm sure Liz may elaborate on that as well as part of her presentation. But we have always asked our responders to identify what caused the problem, and they close out that event on their mobile unit. What we have done over the years is we have a quality assurance group at KUB. And so they go and they analyze that data to make sure that our training is appropriate, that whether it be this responder or another, that they make the right choice on that event. So we do a lot of data analysis, a lot of quality assurance to make sure that we are using the right cost codes when we close those events. And I think just our field staff are getting more used to that as well. What we don't like to see is an unknown cause. And we ask them to go back and look for the root cause for an outage, but sometimes you just can't find that. But through that process, we're confident that we're getting good information on our events as they close them out.
just one comment. You will see over the next several years more and more presentations on the investment of Century 2 money. We appreciate very much your acknowledgement that we need to reinvest in our utility systems to ensure the future is taken care of. And this presentation today, I think, is an example of that. This technology and these projects are very expensive, and without your commitment to investing in the system, capital projects, and as we go forward, the Century 2 program, we would not be able to make these prudent investments. So again, I thank you for that, and we are committed to making sure that you continue to be informed about those things so that you're confident that that money is being spent for the benefit of the system.
Thank you for the President's report.